away, Mike.
Well, maybe by way of brief introduction, just for folks who might be new, the first Monday is our monthly gathering of our community and economy projects. And this is part two, as Bert was saying, of a discussion on decommoditizing software. And part one is recorded. So if anyone hasn't seen that, we can send you the link for part one. Okay, now I'll turn it over to you, Mike.
Okay, great. Let me know when you can see the screen I'm sharing. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can see it.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so it's good to be back. And I'm gonna just give ahead of time, thank you to Mina for really like prepping these slides with me. They look way better this time. You'll see. I'm grateful for that. But last month we got familiar with contemporary software economies. We confirmed the conflict with popular software economic models, and we set a vision of what better looks like. So today we'll focus on practicing these values. So we'll start with a brief refresh from last month. That we'll walk through the rubric that we'll be using to really get familiar and look at alternative software options. Then we'll walk through just short of 20 examples, which is a lot, but we'll move swiftly through them, and then we'll close and open for conversation. So refreshing on the main points from last month, just so we're all on the same page. Computer application software is dominated by a model of rented software. So this includes subscription software, freemium software, and free, quote, free software that's mostly, maybe ad supported. Under this model, software is merely accessed by consumers, but people are not equipped with any ability to make the software theirs. We talked through examples of how we're able to and encouraged to maintain and fix our cars. We're encouraged to fix our homes and our furniture and our gardens, but it's literally impossible to fix your app when it's annoying you or change the way the app works to meet your preferences. We do see regulation being imposed and anti-big tech movements underway, but these efforts assume that software should continue being a transaction between company and consumer. And these movements are most interested in maintaining a healthy economy and a protected consumer. And so we look at the free software movement, a movement for accessing and distributing software in a cooperative and mutual way. Under this model, software is a shared good that anyone can contribute to and access. And financial exchanges may take place, but they're made to direct laborers as a gift rather than as a transaction. And we talked through two examples of free software of Mozilla Firefox and Nextcloud. And this was a visual kind of how we remembered or imagined rented software, where you enter the gate to have access to it. And at any moment you can be cut off. And while you're in the gate, you must transact on their terms, you must engage on their terms, but that software is not yours. Whereas free software, we think of it more as a community garden or a shared space where you can come and you can take the fruit that's available, you can contribute your labor and contribute towards the fruit. You can transact with people that you meet there. You can take seeds back home to just for your own space. Okay, so then how do we find a better way to embrace more of this community garden sort of thing? Well, it requires developing an eye for navigating software. So to help, I'm going to share a set of 3 questions that we ask about the software that we're using today, and 5 questions to help us consider another way. So before we get into this, I want to be clear, and I'm partially building off of a question that Malcolm asked last month. I'm not necessarily advocating for the use of software. I'm not saying when we talk about a free software solution that you need this in your life. I'm saying that if you have a need or a desire that inspires you to use software, that there's a better way to determine which software you use and how you engage with it. So that's a whole nother conversation maybe of how do we navigate what are our desires and needs and how to actually make those decisions. But that's not really what I'm going to focus on so much. So evaluating the software that you use today. This is what I kind of said. So looking at software use today, 3 questions. Is it subscription, freemium, free, purchased, or free software? Remember, those are those models, those revenue models we talked about before. Is it local software, internet-tied software, or web software? By the way, I'm going to get into this more detailed what these are in a moment. Is the software using proprietary standards or free standards? And then 2 other questions when we're evaluating a new piece of software. Is this an alternative software option or augmentation of the service? And then how significant of a change would this be for us? How hard would it be? How much getting used to it would it take? So let me break down these questions real quickly. So is it subscription, freemium, free, purchased, or free? This just checks if there's a problem to solve or not. If the software you're assessing is free software, free as in freedom, you probably don't need to do anything about it then. You're probably in a good place. Is it local software, internet-tied software, or web software? This question provides just some helpful context for what you're using or what you're considering using. What do these terms mean? So local software, this is software that you install once on your computer or your phone, and it will be accessible indefinitely. So think of when you install Microsoft Word on your phone or your computer, better example, like for the most part, it's there, it's there. There's no taking it away from it. There's no one that can take it away. Internet-tied software is probably you install it once on your computer or your phone, but you still need the internet connection to fully use it. So think about like the YouTube app on your phone. The YouTube app, if you don't have an internet connection on your phone, you open it, it still opens, but just nothing shows. You kind of need an internet connection to pull the videos from the internet. Or Zoom. Zoom is software that you install on your computer. You can open it technically if you don't have an internet connection, but you really can't talk to anybody unless you have an internet connection. And then web software, this third one, this is software that you access through a web browser, and you definitely need an internet connection to access. So this is Gmail, Facebook, Squarespace, Nextcloud, things that you have to connect to. Okay, is it using proprietary standards or free standards? This is a little bit more complicated, and I'll give a little more context. So a lot of rented software is designed to be used in one way and only one way in the interest of the company that's providing the software. It's not interoperable. So Spotify is an example of this, and I'll describe Spotify this way. So imagine if CDs sold by Sony Records could only be played by Sony CD players. That's what Spotify is. Music purchased by Spotify is only available via Spotify software. We're accustomed to it, but it's not a model of freedom. Fortunately, there's a series of shared standards, similar to how the compact disc is a shared standard, or electrical outlets that you plug your things into are a shared standard. Examples include email, send and receive technology, document file formats, instant message protocols. These are shared standards that are used across many different types of software. So just in the way that there's many different CD players to purchase, shared standards mean there's many different ways to do the same thing. So is this an alternative software option or augmentation of the service? So rented software using the subscription, freemium, or free model are what we're moving off of, but some of these services take advantage of those shared standards that I mentioned. This enables us to augment the way we use software rather than completely changing it. So an example for this, when we think of email, we think of Gmail, but Gmail operates entirely off the free email standard, SMTP, IMAP. This means that you can start by accessing your Gmail using a free software email client instead of the gmail.com software, and in the process serving less value to Google. Of course, it's always better just to transition completely off of Gmail, but I admit that's a hard thing to do, to change your email address to everybody you know. So there's some examples we're going to explore where most of them we explore alternative software, but I want to call out some are good just to augment rather than having to completely change everything. This last one, how significant of a change would this be? So I kind of just made up a silly scale to give some sense of direction. 1 is why not? Just do it. Do it right now while I'm talking. 5 is probably get some help and have someone sit down with you and do it with someone else. And then you can kind of imagine what's in between. So 2, it will take some getting used to, but you'll be fine. You can do it alone. A lot of what I described today is 2. 3, it's getting some extra context or doing a little bit of homework before you make any change. And 4, plan on having some bugs along the way or troubleshooting along the way, but you'll get there and you won't cause any problems. You don't have to be afraid. Okay, so we know what we want to use free software, that we want to use free software, and we have a framework for assessing our current software use and seeing better options. So let's dive in. So I have this split into a few sections. We're going to walk through, again, almost 20 examples. The first 4 are foundations, then communication software, then information management software, then media access software, then media creation software. If we, in the time we have, I can't audit every service that you use, but the goal is to walk away with enough examples that we get some sense of how to practice these values ourselves. Some screenshots I show will be of laptops, some of phones, but don't assume that what I'm talking about is specific to the phone or laptop. Just because I show a phone screenshot doesn't mean it's not available on a laptop. And as I'm walking through, like, take notes. This is a lot of information I'm going to dump on y'all. So take notes. What seems especially relevant to you in your digital life? What are you curious to learn more about? What do you want support from others in trying? What is the annoying question going through your head that's stopping you from understanding what I'm even presenting? The point of this session is to get your mind moving on what updates you want to make, but it won't spell everything out in a special detail. Okay, I'm going to take a sip of water. So start with foundations. We'll start with operating system. So the operating system, this is the foundation of the device that you use, whether it's a laptop or a phone or a tablet. When you think of operating system, you might think of Windows or Mac OS or Android or iOS. The operating system is the environment that allows other software to run and be available to you. So it's super influential. It's the foundation of how you access software. Despite how important this is, most people don't realize that there's even an option to use other operating systems besides the ones that just come preloaded with their devices. It's possible to set up a different operating system on your computer or phone, but it's just harder on Apple devices. And Ubuntu is the most popular version of GNU Linux, which is the child of Richard Stallman, who we talked about last week. So here's, again, a look. This is kind of that rubric we talked through. I just chose, again, this is not every operating system. This is just 2. And I would say, considering the transition to Ubuntu, it starts with making a list of all the software and tasks that you're accustomed to doing on your device, and then determining whether you can do that with Ubuntu or not. That's a good exercise to get started. And I say 4 because it just will require a little bit of troubleshooting or a little bit of homework with someone, maybe with some support. Okay, a web browser. So your operating system allows you to run software on your device, but the web browser is the piece of software that is your portal to the World Wide Web, your portal to the internet. So Chrome is the most popular web browser. It's built and designed by the company that has a borderline monopoly on the internet advertising market. Now, this is an interesting example where you look at the standards. Chrome uses free standards. So what's interesting is Google builds a free version of Chrome. It's called Chromium. It's the foundation of what Chrome is. And Google has actually done a public service to the community by making Chromium open source, free. It's free software, so anybody can take and modify it. And so that's why I highlighted Firefox last month and Brave this month. These are, Brave is good too. And Brave is an example of them taking the source code, the free software of Chromium, and adjusting it. They stripped away the Google away from it, any Google parts, and made it a little bit simpler and made it more privacy centric, and kept it fully free. And so you'll see a number of these examples where it's just a slight augmentation or a slight difference of a popular software. So another foundation of how we use computers is our search engine. Okay, your operating system allows you to run software on your device. Your web browser is the piece of software that's your portal to the World Wide Web. And then your search engine is a tool you use to find things on the web that you're not sure how to find. So a search engine is a service. It's a super complex and expensive service. And there's only a handful of search engines, and many search engines power each other. It's very hard to run a search engine just on your own. So DuckDuckGo is a quality search engine. but it's not free. And it gets revenue from ads. So another just creative, I think DuckDuckGo is good. It's a better option than Google, but another creative solution is what's called a Google proxy. And Google is a fun example of this. Google is a mediator between Google. When you search Google, it runs the Google search anonymously and serves the information through you, but without you actually needing to access Google or without you needing to share any information with Google, and with stripping a lot of the commercial elements of Google from the page. So I saw a hand raised.
Oh, I was just going to ask about DuckDuckGo, but you answered it.
Oh, great. Okay. Okay. The last big part of foundations. Okay, here's Google. And this is an example of augmentation. Again, like I said, it's impossible to set up a whole new search engine. Like that takes it's really really complex. There's only like 4 maybe search engines. But Google is an augmentation. It's the best we can do. This last one I think might be a little bit more abstract, but I think it's really probably the most important. And it's the way you access software. I use the example of Google Play, but you can also think of the Apple App Store on your phone or your laptop or whatever. So remember in the past, you wanted a piece of software, so you went to the store and you bought a disk from the store and you put the disk into your computer. Or maybe you went to the website and you downloaded the file from the website. You might even pay them money on the website. The Apple App Store on iPhones changed that. They became the mediator, and they really were very successful in saying all transactions must go through us. It's impossible to run a piece of software on your phone, on an iPhone, that's not mediated by Apple. So this has become really normal. Everyone's copied Apple because it makes a lot of money and it puts a lot of power and market power in that company's hands, whoever can mediate those transactions. But obviously there's lots of problems with this model. Most significantly, the financial cut that is taken to these large companies like Apple and Google. Fortunately on Android, it's not possible with an iPhone, but on Android, you can install other app stores. You don't have to use the Google Play Store. You can use other ones. And so F-Droid is the best example. F stands for free. So think of it as an app store only with free software. It's awesome. What's funny about F-Droid, and it's a little bit of a psychological change. You're not going to find Gmail on F-Droid. You're not going to find Netflix on F-Droid. You're not going to find Instagram. It's a community of volunteer projects. It's a repository, a collection of volunteer projects that are probably going to meet your needs just fine. But I give it a 2 just because it's just a little bit of different strain of the way you're used to using your device. You're not going to find big brands on there. You're going to find projects that are probably going to do just fine though. I think F-Droid is if you have an Android phone, it's the perfect way to really get started. Okay. Okay, communication, email. So there's a few layers to exploring email. First, the email address provider or service. And then second is the software that you use to read or write your emails. The second one, the way you read and write your emails, that's super easy to change. That's because email is, again, a free open technology. It's an open standard. So whether your email address is with Gmail, Yahoo, or mine is michaelgbass.com, it's all the same underlying technology. So this is an example where we can augment the way we use a proprietary service. So a great way to start with this is if you have Gmail and everyone has your email address and you're like, oh, I don't want to change my email address. You start by, you still have your email address, but instead of going to gmail.com to access your email, feed that data into an email service like Thunderbird on your computer, or on my phone, I use an app called P = P to access my email. So I'm not giving my attention and my additional unnecessary information to Gmail that I need to. Obviously, Gmail is still mediating all my conversations, but this is just, I think, one important step to try. Thunderbird is a great a great computer application on the computer to use for that. Okay, video chat. This is another example of a free standard making many viable alternatives. So Zoom is not free software, but a community of people in the 2010s created something called WebRTC. WebRTC is a shared standard. It's a standard, it's a technology that's baked into every web browser, from on your phone onto your laptop. And WebRTC as a standard makes it really easy for anybody to make a video conferencing app. And so Jitsi is the most popular example of a WebRTC video chat service. It's free as in freedom, but it's also free as in monetarily. It doesn't cost any money to use. But I want to be honest here that Zoom is popular in part because of the simplicity of its linked room, but it's also its stability. Like, there's a lot of technology that goes into Zoom that makes the signal so smooth and that like avoids hiccups. This is an example where if you start using a WebRTC service like Jitsi, you're going to notice a difference. It's just the truth, and I'm not going to deny that. It's not going to be quite as smooth, quite as flawless, but it's worth trying. It's worth something dabbling with and seeing how it feels. Instant messaging. People often praise WhatsApp because it's super secure. It's what they call end-to-end encryption. So you'll hear people say, oh, use WhatsApp, use WhatsApp, use WhatsApp. It's extra safe. What that means is that WhatsApp has no access to what you're messaging about. And that's true. I agree, this is good. WhatsApp is a far better choice than iMessage for that reason, or Facebook Messenger or whatnot. But ultimately, WhatsApp is still a centralized technology that's owned and managed by an advertising business called Facebook or Meta. And so Signal is similar to WhatsApp. It's a messaging service. It's encrypted, and it's free software. They are a 501c3 in this case, and they ask for donations. And it's really nice. It's nice to use. But kind of like WhatsApp, you have to have your friends using it too. This is kind of niche, but I like showing off because you probably didn't know, like Slack. I don't know if you've used Slack before. It's really expensive. Like, who wants to pay a lot of money just to maintain group chat history and conversations? Mattermost is a community developed Slack alternative, and it's awesome. Like, it's just there. Like, you probably never heard of this. It looks like Slack. It works like Slack. It looks decent, and it works decently well. You have to start with doing some work to set it up, and having a server available to do that. That's why I put it as a 3 here. Okay. Third section, information management. Okay, file syncing. So this is what I mean here is like when you have your files in your computer and you want them backed up because you're afraid that if your computer, your hard drive is going to get killed. So services like Dropbox, Google Drive, iCloud, they've all gotten us familiar with backups to the cloud. So we're really less comfortable than ever for having files stored on our computer. We always fear that something bad could happen and the file could disappear at any moment. This is okay, but it's good to remember that this is a new phenomenon. Like, I think just like the last 5-10 years. Before cloud storage, we would back things up to our external hard drives, and that was fine. Kind of annoying, I guess. Or you just lose the files forever. And you know what? Maybe that's okay. I'm just going to call it out. Maybe it's okay if we lose our files forever sometimes. Maybe that's just a good thing. But if you feel it's important to have file backups online and always available, another option is to run this backup yourself or with the community. And so Nextcloud is a good example of it. It's just like Dropbox. It automatically syncs your folders on your computer or your phone to a backup. It makes them accessible on the website. I give this a 4 because you got to start by setting up a server. Okay, document editing. Google Docs is a text editor. What made it different from Word, and it is that multiple people could edit at the same time. Now I think Word does that too, but that was new. 15 years ago or 10 years ago, and that you can edit on any computer you want to log into Google Docs. That's what made it unique. So fortunately, there's document standards that lots of software use. So this is where I say Google Docs, look at the standards. Google Docs uses free standards. It's easy to interoperate the doc files between Google Docs and other software. So CollaborOffice is simply, it's like Google Docs, except it's not Google, and it's free software. And it's online editing, it's free editing. There's also OnlyOffice, that's what I'm presenting to you in now. And so this weekend, Mina and I were both on our laptops at the same time, editing this presentation at the same time. Just there was no hiccups, it just worked. And there was no corporation. The server we was using was a community co-op server based in New York City. Emma.
Question that's back a topic, and maybe it'd be better to save this for later, but just while it's on my mind. For server, like for Nextcloud, which requires you to have your own server or to go through a particular server. To be clear, that means if the server gets like unplugged or something, the data is still there, you just can't access it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I remember like the video games where like, or like there's an episode of Seinfeld where like George has the highest rating on like the Donkey Kong game and like at some bar or something like that, and he wants to move it to his house, but he doesn't want to lose his memory of him being the highest rating. Like, so no, that's not a problem here. Like, even if you lose electricity, the data is just there. It's like storage. Get calendar. Again, like text documents, like email calendars also have a set of shared standards. There's a shared technology, a universal technology of how calendars can sync and communicate and save. This means that online calendars can be accessed through multiple channels. For example, if you use Google Calendar, but you don't want to use the Google Calendar app, you can access your Google Calendar through a free software calendar app on your phone if you wanted to. Or what I do is my calendar, instead of being based in Google, is based in Nextcloud, and that calendar syncs across all my devices. And the Android app I use is eTar. It's the name of the calendar app, and I think it's fine. Again, I put it as a 4 just because it takes getting used to set up Nextcloud, but you could even start using eTar with Google Calendar today if you wanted to. Okay, notes. Okay, Apple operates most things on the freemium model. So they offer things for free, but they want you to upgrade. iCloud storage is what they usually want you to upgrade to. You purchase their hardware, but they still want you to pay. Notes is a popular app. Notes is a really great example of proprietary software attempting to form a dependency, because if you compile years of notes, that are important to you, and you're like, okay, I don't want an iPhone anymore. I don't want a Mac. I want to export these. They export as a PDF. And a PDF is the worst possible document to ever export to, because you can't modify it. That's an intentional decision. You can import your notes from most any file format possible, but that you can only import. They'll welcome anything, but they don't want you to let anything out. That's just evil. That's why that makes me angry. So, but there's many ways to manage your notes for little to no cost. Again, I honestly use the Nextcloud Notes app, and it's great, but Joplin is another example. And Joplin uses shared standards that sync when they're visible and readable on Nextcloud Web or on the Joplin website. So again, the Notes proprietary standards, you have to do a PDF, but Joplin is free standards. So no matter if you don't like Joplin, you can change to another software and it will still work. Very easy. Okay, this is similar. I don't need to say much, but I think password managers are funny because they have to make a bunch of features just to justify the cost, but there's really not much to it. It's just Nextcloud passwords can generate passwords and store your passwords and make sure they don't get lost. Okay, maps. Okay, so think of Wikipedia, the way Wikipedia is to Encyclopedia Britannica. That's what OpenStreetMaps is to Google Maps. Google Maps is like Encyclopedia Britannica. It's one hub, one company trying to organize information. Wikipedia is all people contributing to information. So is OpenStreetMaps. It's all people contributing information. So imagine what is in the best interest of Google for them to compile and to expose compared to what is in the best interest of people to compile to expose. I'll tell you, When I use OpenStreetMaps, I see clear listings for public restrooms. I see really good templates and routes for hiking. I see other points of interest that isn't going to be indexed in Google Maps in the same way, because there's just not an incentive for the business to do that. Also, Google Maps has lots of ads and sponsored content, and so it always requires an internet connection, whereas OpenStreetMaps, it's all local, it's all saved on your device. So even if you have no internet connection, it will just always work. But it takes lots of volunteers. I think a lot of people, give their time to make OpenStreetMaps good, but it's in a city like Seattle and probably Portland, it's really, really good and accurate. Okay, so now media access software, music. Media services like Spotify require really complex relationships with record labels. These are old businesses, so it's really hard actually to kind of change that. Streaming services promote themselves as the way that you have access to everything at any time, but it's really not that true, because as soon as you stop paying them money, you have access to nothing. And I think the gravity of this is really heavy. I've been a Spotify subscriber for about 5 years. I've listened to many albums, but when I end my subscription, I won't have them anymore. And in that time, I could have purchased probably 50, records or CDs that I will note that I just simply won't have. There's some people who are forming some musician-owned Spotify alternatives that are co-ops, which are exciting, but you're not going to find the records that you want there. So I really think, honestly, the best option here is just going to the library and getting CDs, or just like go into Goodwill or whatever. But another thing that again I do is there's something called Subsonic, where you have your music on a server and you can access it from any device. So if you like the element of Spotify where it's have your music anywhere you want it, that's possible through free software. So I have my music on my Raspberry, on my server with Nextcloud, and on my phone I can stream it to my phone or any other internet connected device whenever I want. Similar to Spotify, there's no exciting alternative for accessing film content, except for just going to your public library. I think that's probably the best option. But there's an option for ability if you want to have to manage, if you want to have access like your computer, like videos on a television, is a thing called Kodi. You run Kodi on a computer, the computer connects into your television, and then you can stream stuff, and it's all free software. So there's even, if you have these movie files, you can play them on your television. But again, I'm just gonna say the library and DVD player are probably your best option. This is a better example, I think. This is my, I pointed this as one, just like go do it now. YouTube has a monopoly on the video sharing market. There's no way around that. We all love YouTube. I'm not saying there's not really a good alternative to YouTube, unfortunately. But NewPipe is an Android app, and it's just a showpiece of the power of free software. So what it does is it scrapes data from YouTube, and it lets you play videos. It lets you play them back audio only. It lets you download them. It lets you save them to your device. It lets you bookmark videos and follow channels all locally on your device. Google obviously does not like NewPipe, so it's not available in the Google Play Store. You can't even find it there because it doesn't meet Google Play Store regulations. So you can only get it through F-Droid. So this is my excuse to tell you to go get F-Droid so that you can get NewPipe. News. I give the example here of Apple News. It's another example of Apple latching to its freemium model. It charges $9.99. When you use the Apple News app, it's just riddled with promotions to upgrade for the $9.99 subscription service. Yeah, and that they take a big cut from that. But RSS, you probably have heard of RSS or seen RSS. It's not a piece of software, but it's a technology. It's a standard that news publishers integrate into their websites. So it allows you to extract the news from most news sites and blogs into one personal feed. So one example of an RSS app is called Feeder. That's the screenshot here. And this is Feeder on Android. You enter into Feeder which news source you want, and then it just always pulls the articles into the feeder app. It won't curate your news for you in the way that Apple News might, like recommended for you, but it's a manual process of choosing what sources you want to be exposed to. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe that kind of that barrier and that kind of slowing down of things isn't a problem. Okay, and just the last two, photo editing software. Creating media editing software doesn't have the same degree of strength as other free software projects. Photoshop is incredibly powerful software, but unfortunately Adobe has maintained their tight grip and actually even made it stronger. They've transitioned from a revenue model where you purchase to the subscription model where you have to maintain your ongoing payment to them in order to access their software. But GIMP is the most used popular free software alternative. It has many features, but to be honest, it's really not that user friendly to most people. I don't know if Photoshop really is either, but Malcolm probably used GIMP before or heard of it and know it has its shortcomings, but I had to plug it. And lastly, website management. Free software really thrives most among technical people. So of course, there's many free software opportunities when it comes to website management. But Squarespace is just the antithesis of this. It has incredible lock-in, meaning that once you start, it's very hard to leave, especially for a service that facilitates a service on mostly free standards. So WordPress is a long-standing great option for managing a website. It's an admin interface for managing the contents on the website or the blog. There's no code required to keep your website up and running. I think Squarespace succeeded because it has an even simpler editor that has really strong marketing. They were able to create a brand really well that WordPress doesn't have, where WordPress was kind of stuck with a blogging legacy that was not relevant to all people. Okay, we made it. This was a lot of information. It's not all relevant to you, but I really and strongly encourage all of you to take some form of action from this concept of embracing community developed software over corporate software. Free software reinforces the truth that people can work together as people, not just employees or consumers. And that gifts are a good thing and have an important place in our world. I'm going to share a few links to popular services that I mentioned, so if you want to explore them some more. And when you visit these, you might see some reference to the term open source. And I even used that term earlier today on accident. Open source is a term that is similar to free software. While presenting, I was intentional to focus on free instead of open source. But when you see things listed as open source, you can imagine that they carry the same core values. An example of a place where you'll see open source listed and a place that's incredibly helpful tool. One of my most visited sites is called alternative2.net. I have it in the bottom right-hand corner. On Alternative 2, you type in a service that you use, for example, Chrome, and it tells you about the software and it shows you other alternative options. And it lets you filter those other options to open source or free suggestions. So see, I typed in Chrome. It tells me that Chrome is free, but it's proprietary. It's a web browser. Here are some free open source alternatives to Chrome. And you can click this filter to only show me open source. And it's a really easy way. So if there's other pieces of software that I did not cover that you're really curious to learn more, what are other options? Alternative2.net is that website. I'm also talking to Bert and Emma about how we can continue this conversation and provide support to each other as we transition to free software, and we can talk about that. Ideas are really welcome. And before we open up the conversation, I'll just close out with a set of quotes from Richard Stallman. He's the activist for free software that we covered last month. The main argument for the term open source software is that free software makes some people uneasy. That's true. Talking about freedom, about ethical issues, about responsibilities as well as convenience is asking people to think about things they might rather ignore. This can trigger discomfort, and some people may reject the idea for that. It does not follow that society would be better off if we stopped talking about these things. And sharing is good, and with digital technology, sharing is easy. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mike. That was there was obviously a lot of research in that. So thank you. What a, yeah, a lot of gems there that I'm sure others will want to pursue. And yeah, let's open it up.
If I could begin with a question, I noticed that a lot of the software you needed to have downloaded something besides the Apple App Store. Even OpenStreetMaps, I wondered if that was available as some sort of software download on iPhones. So I guess my real question is, like, for us iPhone users, is the first thing we have to do to switch out of that, and like what other phone brands would you recommend?
Yeah, so the way the App Store works, that it's mediated entirely by Apple, a corporation, is just the complete antithesis to what we're talking about, and that's what makes this unfortunate. And it's what it demotivates engineers who embrace the free software movement from committing their time towards Apple, making Apple software. It's not in their best interest to do that. That's not where their audience is. That's why Apple is not as popular in parts where free software is more popular, like in Europe. So I'm not going to tell you to get another phone, because that's a whole nother problem that we could have someone else do another session about waste and technology, like waste. So I, use your phone as much as long as you can. I think though, something like OpenStreetMaps, what you can do is search on DuckDuckGo or Google Proxy for OpenStreetMaps iOS, and you'll find apps. Or go to alternative2.net and put in Google Maps and select iOS as your filter and select free or open source software as your filter, and you'll probably find some OpenStreetMaps app. There's definitely OpenStreetMaps apps for iOS, I know that, but you want to find one that's especially embraces these free software values. So yeah, it's there. It's just going to be a little bit trickier. Yeah, and in terms of making your next purchase, I didn't talk about this, but remember when I talked about the open when I talked about the operating system, Ubuntu, you can also install different operating systems for your phone. And what was I? Oh, I forgot my point. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah, let's move on, and then it'll come up to me later. Wait, David.
Hi, I do have a question, but before that, I wanted to make a comment, but I was late last time, so you may have already said this, but when you talked about the community garden model, I would have to say using Linux always felt like that. Like you mentioned, oh, the whole idea that you need to fix your cars, that is exactly the Linux operating system. Sometimes you have to fix things, and you just search online, and a dozen random people throughout the world have answered that same problem, and they tell you exactly how to fix it. I mean, you always feel like you're a part of a community. And so frankly, that would be the first thing I would change. If you, maybe all of you use Linux already, but so the question I had was, in switching to something like Signal, would all of your contacts need to migrate to Signal?
Yeah, so if you want to use Signal, it's only going to work if the other person is using Signal too.
Okay.
Which is hard. That's really hard. Yeah. But yeah, it's not helpful if you're the only one. But I encourage you to install it and see who else is using it, and you might be surprised. Oh, and it's easy because it's kind of like WhatsApp. Like when you install it, it just looks at all your contacts, and it will say, "Oh, we looked at your contacts and saw that these 30 people use it." Yeah, Malcolm. And y'all, it's a small group, so you can just speak up. I think it's small enough.
Another form of like getting tied into a particular platform that I thought I would mention is that, so for our family's graphic design business, we're pretty much tied into the Adobe software, Photoshop, InDesign, and the rest of them, because clients and other collaborators use them. And like, there's no way to, and then unfortunately, they of course force you to continually buy upgrades by making the old ones no longer operational. And that forces you to upgrade your hardware, contributing to the problem of, e-waste that was touched on briefly here. You know, like a computer that's still perfectly fine can no longer run the new bloated Photoshop. And so there you go, another new computer every couple of years. So just another aspect of this problem that I've yet to figure out how we could get around, but it's a difficult one.
Yeah, building off of Malcolm, like there was like policy like in the 30s or something that made it a requirement that automobile manufacturers had to provide public documentation for how to fix their cars. That was not, and they had to release certain information to allow for third parties to create replacement parts. That took advocacy, it took activism, it took conversations with policymakers to make that kind of change. And so those things that we're used to, it wasn't just done out of the goodwill of people. So again, I don't like to put too much emphasis on the political part. I kind of talked about that in the last session, but just this week, the White House put some pressure on Congress and release some statements saying we don't want to make it possible for Apple to be the sole distributor of software for their and other companies too, to be the sole distributor of software and transactions. So there's definitely some antitrust element that could make this better, and it could impact things like you're saying, Malcolm. A big step would be for the Photoshop file format to be interoperable between more software, so that you could still work with other people but not have to use Photoshop.
I like just to begin conversation about the more practical one, I guess, of what are people interested in just without reviewing yet, what are people most interested in doing? What do you would you most want to do with others and or with support? And also a few of us at Simone Bay House had a call with Mike last week and just we were thinking, oh, maybe the starting point has something to do with like a server. And then, but then we ended the conversation, well, not sure that that's true. But after the thing you said about Nextcloud, then the idea of a WordPress site, and we need to create a new website. So so maybe that is something we should do. But in any case, I want to see what others want to do and what mutual support and health, just where people are with that, if there are any concrete thoughts.
Well, for me, getting away from Zoom would be great. With I forget the name of the I forget the name of the alternative you mentioned, Mike. But does that require like the people on the call to like go through any special hoops? Because the nice thing about Zoom, because I set up Zoom meetings, and the nice thing is you can send them a link and it's easy to download the thing. It's trusted. How easy would it be concretely just start setting up meetings in something else?
Yeah, so like the example I gave was Jitsi, and Jitsi is built on a shared standard. The software is already built into your browser. WebRTC is already built into your browser, so there's no install. It's even easier than Zoom. It's just you have to go into it knowing there's going to be a hiccup, and learning to figure out what is your tolerance for that, of what is too much, what is okay and what's not okay, and we have to figure that out, and that's up to us to decide.
And when you say hiccups, you mean like suddenly dropped connections or people freezing up or lag time or something like that?
Yeah, I think grainy connections especially. It doesn't have the same compression, the same technology to make the signal as high quality, high definition. So it can be fuzzier.
Well, we're definitely up for doing that. I mean, we should just the next set of things that we do. I think we're just discussing, just doing it.
Yeah, I sent a link to Bert for Jitsi the other day, and we all got on the call, no problem. Like, I didn't even have to give Bert instructions or anything. It just opened it.
And it looks like it records too.
Oh,
A local recording, because that would be the thing that's important to us. would be being able to record meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested in overhauling my computer to the extent I'm able to on a Mac. One thing that, yeah, I guess some of the things that I would hesitate about are, of course, like one of the nice things about Chrome and Gmail, maybe this is true of other things too, is that it sort of curates everything for me. Like I don't feel like I'm not going to 5 different websites. I'm hitting the browser button that makes it feel like it's all on one website. And so there's something that feels simple about that. And so I don't know if changing that would still feel simple. But I appreciate what you're saying, which is just that, yeah. It feels simple because there's a monopoly, and that's why it's simple. And I guess it would probably be good to appreciate the kind of that like a bit more difficulty that it creates to realize just how many services I'm using and are they necessary. And so imagine there'd be benefits to come from that. But
Yeah, and the good thing, Emma, is that most examples I gave, like they're not going to do harm. Like the biggest one that I give the most caution on is writing Ubuntu on your machine and writing over the disk. Like that, you could lose a lot of stuff that would make you frustrated. But like, there's going to be no harm in opening up your Mac, installing Thunderbird, configuring it with your Gmail account, and just seeing what it feels like. Your emails are still going to be visible in the Gmail web interface just the same way. So it's just things to try.
Yeah, Mike, when you said that, one thing that comes to mind is I think it was in last month's call, someone used the analogy of a money move, which we've used when talking about credit union things, that moving your money from, let's say, your bank of origin to NDFCU, where we could have this community handle it this way. It feels different when you do it together. And I found that with a different community that did a similar thing. But I wonder if there was some layer that maybe it seems like the easiest layer based on the way that you segmented things would be things like you just talked about there, that sort of front end. I forget the word you used, but it's like you're still using Gmail. It's just Gmail is not benefiting in the same way or something. That maybe something like that. So just because some of us use, like myself, are using like Macs right now. So, okay, so that would be a lot of these things would taken up. But anyway, that's just a thought. I wonder if something like that might be worth trying to organize.
Yeah, we have a Friday evening dedicated to this with David's help, or someone who's more knowledgeable than those of us who live at the house.
I'm curious, who here runs Android on their phone already? Okay, Mary. So a few of us, you could install F-Droid right now. You can go to fdroid.org, search for F-Droid, install it, and just I'm not saying get more apps, because you need more apps, but the next time you feel like, oh, I wish my phone did this, just go to F-Droid and see if you can solve your problem through that. That's a really easy way to get started.
Mike, what do you suggest for how to continue this conversation and try to involve others who the time didn't work for, who we didn't engage properly?
I mean, that question, I guess, is best answered by other folks, but I kind of like the idea of having some kind of like office hours sort of thing, where come to the session with some expectation of what you want to do during that time. For example, you want to set up a new email client, or you want to dabble with a new app repository like F-Droid, and then do it. Everyone can just do it during that time. We don't have to talk. You don't need. But then when you have questions, you just raise your hand and ask the group. So we might not be talking during the whole hour. We'll just be doing something, but know that we're all available to each other if we have any hiccups.
That's a good idea. Cool. Okay, yeah. That's so maybe, and that would probably be the for something to do before anything potential like the other thing you said. So maybe we should just schedule that for Okay, well, I guess let's email about it, because so as not to put too much pressure on scheduling right now. But if anyone has ideas about that, alternative too.
Yeah,
Um,
this is just copy and paste this and save it.
Yeah.
These are a bunch of the links that or services, some of them that I mentioned that I didn't share links to everything, but that last link is a link to the presentation. So you can see the presentation
Right.
and see the examples if you want to remember what certain things are.
Great, I'm copying it into my notes app now.
I,
It's like an export it as a PDF later.
that is evil. I agree with you, Mike.
I really think a great thing. There's a New York and Mexico based co-op, technology co-op that they run their own server space, and I paid $120 for a 1-year subscription, a membership. I have one vote in the annual vote, and I get 100 gigabytes of data storage, and I can create unlimited Nextcloud accounts. So if we can all share 100 gigabytes of data storage, we all have Nextcloud accounts now, and I can and so we can, we can start to dabble with that and explore and log in and click around and see if you want to, instead of backing up your contacts, your calendar to your Google or to Apple, you can start by syncing it to Nextcloud, and okay, it still works. Okay, you can change your Notes app to Nextcloud. Okay, it still works. This is working. See how it feels. That could be something we do in our workshop together.
Cool. Okay. A couple weeks, a month out? Like how far out? Maybe a couple weeks. A month would be a long time because let's not do it a month out. How about a couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whenever I'm happy whenever.
Cool.
Any
Well, thank
other
you.
final thoughts? Something they had on their mind? Cool. Emma, what was?
I was just gonna thank everyone so much for joining us. And wrap up there just because we're already 5 minutes over.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Opens horizons.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.